Good morning. Continuing the review and summary of the conclusion of Hemshech Ayin Beis, and we're reviewing my essay that I wrote on that very topic. So we are on page 24, I believe. Yeah, the last paragraph on page 24. This essay is posted on our Ayin Beis WhatsApp group, so you can find it there. So, in this chapter 5 of the essay, we've entered into the discussion of Riyah, the operative example of eyesight, vision, which serves as a way of understanding how the Neshama comes down below. And though the Neshama is rooted in a very high level, higher than everything, but once it comes into a body and an animal soul, they conceal a big part of the soul's natural divinity. So therefore, the soul needs siyua, support, like an eye that can see, but in the dark, it needs an outside light to shine. And that outside light is Torah, Eine Ha'eda, the leaders, the Malachim, all part of a support system that illuminates for us a path in this world, so the neshama could be guided to know how to live its life. The goal ultimately is that the neshama, once it is illuminated, then it will rise and it'll actually become a mashpia and transmit even higher levels of divine awareness into Torah itself and into the Oyer because it's rooted higher. So it's a constant dual process in that sense. And so we're reviewing that briefly. Riyah goes together with the other two Oyer HaMakabel, the moonlight and a luminous stone, corresponding to the three parts of Torah, Mikra, Mishnah, Talmud, with Mikra being a revelation from above, the Talmud from below, and the Mishnah is something in between. And so we reviewed all that, what I just said. So now to continue the last paragraph on page 24. So he says, "By Hemshech Shalafanenu," which means in the Hemshech Ayin Beis that we have, that is available to us, which means what the Rebbe Rashab wrote, Lo nimtze Hemshech Habir, we don't find a continuation of the explanation Ba'ashayich is the Inyan Hariyah L'Teira Eir, in the connection between Riyah, vision, and Teira Eir. Even though he began by saying, it appears to me, let's explain this with Riyah, but he never gets back to it. Because as we've discussed, the Rebbe Rashab ended the Hemshech and never concluded it. He ended it where you have the three levels of Yichud and never got back to quite a few themes. And one of them is this theme. Which in contrast to the Avodah Neshama on its own, with through davening of Shema, and there it's a level of Shmiya. So he never gets back to that subject. However, al pi hamavur b'teira eir shenetek le'il, according to the explanation in Teira Eir of the Alter Rebbe, where he explains how mashpili lirais Teira Eir connected to Riyah. Yesh leimer, we can say, and this is again not explicit in Hemshech Ayin Beis, but implicit, we can say shebetchilas aveda ner Hashem da neshama atzma. In the beginning of the Avodah, the Ner Hashem, the candle of Hashem, of God, of the soul itself, through contemplating on Hashem Echad, through the service and prayer of Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Magir rak l'bchina Shmiya Bilvad, Shema Yisrael. That on its own only reaches the level of Shmiya. Again, the Rebbe Rashab does not spell this out, but based on the Maimer from the Alter Rebbe, it's pretty clear that that's the case. And through the support and the help of the work of the Avodah of the Malachim, the angels, Bebrichas Yetzer B'Agdama L'Krishma, which we recall and we describe in the bracha right before Shema, Brichas Yetzer, which is our introduction to Shema. V'Yiseirim Mizeh, and furthermore, Aydei Ner Mitzvah, through the candle of a mitzvah, as we learned earlier. Hein Levishas Talis Tefillin Kedim Tefillah, and by mitzvah we mean both the wrapping with talis and tefillin before davening, v'hein mitzvahs la'achar tefillah, and the same, and also the mitzvahs after davening. Like we learned earlier, like in Shema we say these words, which I command you, which is the mitzvahs. Kshartem talking about tefillin, ksaftem talking about mezuzah. And then even furthermore, v'yaseirim mizeh, Aydei v'teira eir. So we have here three things: the siyua, the support of the malachim, the support of ner mitzvah, the support of teira eir, the light of teira. Nimshach eir atzmi mamay lamata, which the teira is mamshich, is drawn down, a core energy from the top down. Ein sof shalifnei at simsum, like we learned earlier. It's undiluted, it's unaffected, unfiltered, divine light, like lifnei at simsum. Umeir hacheshech, and it illuminates the darkness. Uma'afsher haneshama kefishu mislabeshes beguva nefesh habamis, and enables the soul, the way it manifests in the body and the animal soul. Next page, 25. Love laved b'chinas siriyah, to arrive at a higher level of aveda b'chinas siriyah. Leirak b'chinas shmiyah, not only level of shmiyah. So the neshama on its own can reach Shema Yisrael, but with the support of the malachim, who illuminate Einei Hashem, they're like the eyes, the supervisors, and furthermore with the aveda of mitzvah, ner mitzvah, and furthermore the aveda of teira eir, all that elevates the neshama from shmiyah to riyah. That's not just contemplating and understanding and hearing, but it's actually resonating with that clarity as if you see it with your own eyes. Al derech she'er chutz min ha'ayin ma'afsher ha'ayin, with example being like the light outside of the eye, the light that shines in a dark room, enables the eye, which means the power, the faculty of vision, as it manifests in the vessel called the eye, to see even in a dark place. So that's what the power of this outside light has. It allows you to see. Now remember, when you're standing in a dark room, you can still hear things. You can contemplate on things, but you can't see them. So to get to Riyah, the Rebbe Rashab is basically, what we're saying here now, we need the siyua, the support, just like the eye, for it to see in the dark, it needs outside light. And three things he mentions: the malachim, ner mitzvah, and teira eir. So that concludes the paragraph on top of page 25. And let me stop if there are any questions. So this is clearly extrapolated from the Rebbe Rashab's Maimer and Hemshech Ayin Beis, based on the Maimorim of the Alter Rebbe Hagmagbi L'Sheves Hamashpili Lires Teira Eir, and also based a bit on the Maimer Ve'inenu Me'ires that I mentioned when we discussed the other day. So this is a perfect example of something that was not stated explicitly by the Rebbe Rashab, but we're able to derive it from looking at all these Maimorim. So that's very, very gratifying. Are there any questions? Okay. So let's move on. Now, in this context, remember there's also the Maimer of the Mittler Rebbe. Does the Mittler Rebbe add anything to the equation? And the next paragraph is going to focus on an additional point that the Mittler Rebbe adds in his Maimer HaMagbi L'Sheves. Kenira, paragraph 2 on page 25. Apparently, or it seems likely, Shebedrush HaMagbi Shel Admur HaMtzoi, in this Maimer Magbi from the Mittler Rebbe, Moshe b'zeh oy darge. He has another level in addition to what we've discussed till now. And here's the explanation. The Sefer Drush, at the end of the Maimer of the Mittler Rebbe, pages 433 and 434, Mevayer shemashpili lires b'riyah de'er teira hu b'shneihem b'shaveh b'mashpiyah b'mekabel. That the mashpili lires, that it comes down to see, the see with the light of Torah, equalizes the mashpiyah and the mekabel, Torah shebaksav, she'ein Torah shebaksav, and Torah shebal peh. Because generally speaking, when you talk about a mashpiyah and mekabel, there are two different levels. The mashpiyah is the one that's teaching, mekabel is the one that's receiving. But from the Mittler Rebbe, he says that mashpili lires equalizes them both, because also the mekabel is in the level of vision, of sight. The afal pisha b'teira shebal peh, eretz. Even though teira shebal peh, which refers Shemayim v'aretz, heaven is teira shebiksav, like we learned, and eretz, land, is teira shebal peh. Even though mekabel mit teira shebiksav Shemayim, like we learned earlier, that the rain on earth falls from heaven, so too in Ruchnius. So even though the earth of the oral Torah receives from the written Torah, like we said, Menaha Nemila the Amar Kra, everything in the oral Torah is based on the verses of the written Torah. This is the Mittler Rebbe is explaining. The fishe yud zed the mashpili liris ba ma'atzmus erein sof, being that this level of mashpili liris comes from atzmus erein sof, shemashpiyah mekabel klal prat shavin shamamish. When you talk from atzmus point of view, as we've learned earlier a number of times, there mashpiyah mekabel and klal prat, as the Mittler Rebbe explains it, the general and the specific, shavin sham mamish, are mamish equal, because the differences are only from our point of view. But from Atzma's point of view, when he creates a mashpiyah and he creates a mekabel, they're both equal. The sevel das alim v'das tachten yachad, and he contains both the perspective from above and the perspective below as one. As we discussed also, in the Ayin Beis, that the Zichud Tata, that's the perspective from below, that's Tachten. The Zichud Elah, the perspective from above. But from Atzma's point of view, both are equal. Keil Deus Hashem, because he's a total equalizer. Al Kein Mashpili Liris, Ma'ir, the Torah, Meir Matzmuse, B'Teir Shuviksav Shabab Peh, Shemayim V'Oretz B'Shaveh, Bli Hefesh Klal. And therefore, this riyah, this level of riyah that we're achieving in Torah Eir, that comes from Atzmus, radiates in the written Torah and the oral Torah equally, without any difference. Ta'kol echad l'gabe mehus Atzmus, mehus va'atzmus is barach mamish. Because everything is one from the point of view of mehus va'atzmus mamish. So this is something he didn't say till now. Till now he was saying there's the level of Shema, listening, that's the Neshama on its own, and then through Torah, it reaches a level of Riyah, of vision, sight. But now he's saying not just to reach the level of sight, it's a sight that equalizes the Mashpiyah Mekabel, Valkein Gam Riyah V'Shmiyah the Chachma Bina. And Mittler Rebbe says, and therefore, sight and sound, which comes from Chachma and Bina, Nischalfu b'matan Torah. We know that they crossed wires. They were exchanged by Matan Torah. Shoyerei mesanishma. Because we know by Matan Torah they saw the sounds and they heard the sights. How's that possible? Because they reached a level where sound and sight and sound become like one. Shazeu riyah the chachma the Torah shebiksav v'shmiyah the bina b'Torah shebal peh. So these two levels, which in general are two separate levels, but by Matan Torah there was the Gili of Atzmus, there was this synesthesia, as they call it, where sight and sound became exchangeable, they interchangeable. Hainu, Sha'idei hariyah the Torah nisal gam ashmiya Shema Yisrael the neshamas lebchinas riyah, which means through the riyah of Torah by Matan Torah, also the level of shmiya became as clear and crystallized, just like the level of riyah. So in other words, there's a time where shmiya and riyah are two separate levels, but then when you reach a true gili atzmi, like by Matan Torah, the level from atzmos to mahus, there the shmiya and the riyah become like one. Okay. So I'm stopping here. If are there any questions? No questions? Okay, good. So let's continue. V're'ei le'el sham. So now we're looking earlier in the Maimer of the Mittler Rebbe. I'm sorry, Omid Shin Peches Tes, pages 388 and 389. Shebchina Shema Yisrael Eina be'ezel levad b'chitzenius. Then when you say Shema Yisrael, here, O Israel, even though it's Shmiya, it's not just an external listening. In other words, in listening itself, there are levels. You can listen to something superficially, you just hear it in passing. Or you can listen to something intently with depth. But even Shema Yisrael, even before Riyah, is also with the inner dimension of comprehension of Bina in the mind and the heart. So even a Shmiya, like you see, you can listen to someone speaking or teaching, and you're hearing it more surface level, superficially, like I said. Or you can really be concentrating and hearing it in depth. Havchone v'hakore, the recognition and the discernment, b'mitis hadovar, in the truth of the matter, shenisames b'meiche k'meshu bemes lamite, that it resonates in his mind as it is in his ultimate truth. That's why you can have one person listening to someone, if they're listening very externally, they may not get it. Someone who concentrates more will get it and will resonate with them. That you're contemplating on what? On a Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, in Achdus Pshuta, the seamless unity of the divine, to the point that even though it's still Shema, listening, but it's like as if you're listening, as if you're seeing it with your own very eyes, standing close to something. So what he's saying now is that in Shmi itself, there are levels. There are levels where you can come to a point of listening to something so well that it's almost like seeing it. It's not seeing it, but it's almost like seeing it. And that's why we say Shema Yisrael. This power is only in the divine soul. That's called Yisrael. Shema Yisrael. Li Reish. So Yisrael is the same letters as Li Reish. You are a head to me. A head. So it's a powerful level. A head means like the top, the central nervous system. The head is the controlling factor, the mind. At kan l'shene. That's the exact language of the Mittler Rebbe. Now, I'm going to be analyzing this a bit in the next section. I want to make sure everybody's following here. So again, if there's any questions, I'll stop now for questions if there are. The yesh la'ayin, this I'm writing now. We need to understand, we need to delve into this a bit more. Im zayidei shma mitzad atzmei, whether this level of shmiyah, where you really discern and recognize and understand something through listening, almost to the level of seeing, is it coming from Shema itself? Or Shemamshech b'chinas hariyah b'shma Yisrael. Because earlier we learned that it's Torah Eir, that the Torah that illuminates and brings this level of Riyah. From the Mitler Rebbe, it's not clear which one is it. Is this coming from Shema Yisrael itself? In other words, a neshama on its own can concentrate on this level, or is this coming from the power of Torah Eir? So we need to be mind. It's not explicit in the Mitler Rebbe's mind. So I'm just pointing that out. And this is important because in the context of the whole discussion, the soul on its own is contemplating on God's unity. And that brings to Vahafta, to loving God, that also the Nefesh Abamis, the Yetzer Hara also feels that love. So is that on its own? Or can you only reach Shmiya on its own? Can you only reach the level of hearing? Or you need V'Torah Eir to give it more power to be able to hear on a deeper level. So that's something that, as I said, remains not 100% clear. Okay. Ulahoyer, and it's good to remark, Ulahoyer means, let me point out, Shebehemshech Didan, that in our Hemshech Ayin Beis, page 1434, Madgish Shema Shem Ayin. He emphasizes that Shema has yet another meaning, another acronym. Shema is made up of two letters, of two words. Shem, Ayin. Shin Mem is name, Ayin. Bechina Shem Bolvad. It's only like a name. Like, in other words, like listening. It's not the etzem, it's only like a name. Mokir le'elamis, which means it's already connecting to existence. Upira Shem Ayin, Hainu, what is the Ayin? What is the 70? Shem Ayin means a name, and 70. Shekol Mezayin Midas, that it encompasses the 7 Midas. V'kol echad echad kol miyud shemisparim Ayin. And every one of the 7 emotions, which already relates to existence, times 10, because they have the 10 spheres in Chesed, the 10 spheres in Bina, in Gvura. So that's 10 times 7 is 70. In other words, Shema is the divine as it relates to existence more. Aval kama ba hemshech, but later in the hemshech, Ayin Beis, Seif Amid Aleph Tov Nun Gimel and Aleph Tov Nun Daled, at the end of page 1453 and 1454, Mavayat, he explains, Shanashama Atzma B'koyach Atzma, that the neshama itself, with its very own power, Leirak L'mayla Elegam Lamata, and not just the neshama as it is above, but also as it comes down below, Yesh Ba B'chinas Hariyah B'Elakus, it has the level of seeing, experiencing the resonating truth of like seeing godliness, Listakla B'Kara de Malka, to gaze. Istakla is from the word Riyah, to gaze at the beauty of the king. So neshama has that ability, he says later. And it's revealed, like we said before, the light, the outside light, that allows the eye to see. This level of vision of the soul is enabled and revealed through Torah and the work of the malachim. So what you see here is a bunch of levels, like I continue to explain, move on, and it's understandable. Sheyesh dargis b'shma atzmei, that there's levels in Shema itself. Shmiya bilvad lamata meriyah, just hearing something that's lower than vision. Shmiya pnimiyas ki'ilu huraya. A shmiya pnimiyas, a deeper listening, where you're as if you're seeing it. Next level, shmiya shenasa kiriyah, kamei b'matan Torah. Not just that you understand it well as if you're seeing it, but the hearing becomes like seeing, like by Matan Torah, that they heard the sounds. That they heard the sights. Shemin Hasanira. Ay de gili matzmusi is baruch shasham shneim shavim. Through the gili of Atzmus, where there the Shmi and Ri are equal. So there are levels in Shema. There's the first level, which definitely the neshama can achieve on its own. And then there's the levels as the neshama grows, where the shmiya becomes closer to a resonating sight till it becomes literally equal with the sight. Ulamayla mekulam, in the bracket I add, and even higher than that, there's yet a higher level, a fourth higher level. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Hayichud, the Yichud Elah, Yichud Tata Mamish. Where Yichud Elah and Yichud Tata, the higher unity and the lower unity, become one, literally one. Mitzad Atzmus is Baruch Mamish Kidlekaman. Due to Atzmus Mamish Kidlekaman, as shall be explained shortly. So we'll soon explain what this is and how this is even a higher level. It's even higher than Shmiya becoming like Riyah, where they're literally equal mamish. V'gam yesh darges, and there are also levels, b'zichur cha'ayin, in the refinement and the refinement of the eye. There's also levels. In the beginning, the eye is a level of a recipient, through the support of an outside light. So then the eye needs the outside light to be able to see. Till the point that the eye itself begins to see with its own power. To the point that our eyes become like the sun and the moon, kidlekaman. And this too shall be explained soon. Okay. So what I'm really doing here is breaking down an understanding of the difference between Shmiya and Riyah and how they get closer to each other as we grow in our Avodah, in our work. So let me stop again if there's any questions. Everything seems to be very clear, right? Okay. So now next paragraph. Gam yesh la'ayin. Another thing that we need to explore, in the words of the Mitler Rebbe at the end of the subject, page 389. And this is what he says, quote, V'zeu gam ke masher kosav Shema Yisrael, b'shmiya debina. This is also what it says, Shema Yisrael, with Shmiya, Shema, listening, with a level of bina, of comprehension, ba'asoga dafka, sasoga. Shmiya is more comprehending. Sight is more resonating. Shezeu ma'ayin de chachma, liyesh, this is ma'ayin of chachma to the yesh. Chachma is like ayin, bittel, and that's going into Shmiya. Bina is the yesh. Mehepuch daselyan shemiyesh la'ayin, which is going the opposite direction. Then when you go from the top down, there the yesh amiti is God, atzmus, and then you go to ayin. Here we're going from ayin to yesh. That's Shmiya. Lefisha bekrishma misyachid yichudei law v'yichudei tatah. Because in Shema, Yichud in Law and Yichud Torah are united. The Das Elyon and the Das Tacht. Of Das Elyon, the perspective from above and the perspective below. Now here's the thing. We need to understand what the Mitler Rebbe says in this sentence. Because the beginning sounds like he says one thing, and at the end it sounds like he's saying something else. And that's what I'm exploring here. Mitfilas HaMishpat, from the beginning of the sentence, Mitler Rebbe sentence. V'zeu gam kein habola achri habir sherei mesanishna bo mekei chatera, which follows the explanation. That's seeing the sounds by Matan Torah. That comes from the Kei Chatera mashma. From that expression, it seems Shaydei Hariyah the Torah nimsha b'chinas Hariyah gam b'Shema Yisrael. Because he says it goes from Chachma to Yesh. So it seems to be saying that the vision of Teda Er is Nimshach into Shema Yisrael. The Ilum is Sefer Mishpat, however, the end of the sentence seems to indicate something else. When the Mittler Rebbe writes that, mashma, from that it appears, that it's referring to not that Riyah is being nimshach into Shmiya, but that it's referring to a level that is higher, that unites them completely and seamlessly. So I write, V'ulai merumas b'zeh beis dargeselu. And maybe the Mittler Rebbe is actually hinting to that we have both levels. One is Shmiya being illuminated by Riyah. It's like, think of somebody who saw an experience, and is sharing what they saw with you that heard about it. So you're getting that clarity. And then there's even a higher level where it becomes literally like one. That's what I'm suggesting here. Again, this is all delving a bit more into the meaning of what the Maimer of the Mittler Rebbe is coming to add. Okay. Now, we're going to go back. All this is still the beginning of Avodah. Why? Because we began with Shema Yisrael, and from there we're growing to the level of Riyah, of vision. So Aval Zeu Adayin Riyas HaNeshama Aboy De Teda Er. Everything we discussed here is the Neshama reaching a level of resonating vision and clarity that comes through the power of Teda Er. That comes through the power of Teda Er. Omnom b'seifa Veda. However, that's in the beginning when the eye needs an outside light to shine to be able to allow the eye to see in the dark. But the end of the Aveda, la'achre birur v'zichur chaguf ha'nefesh habamis va'elam, after the clarity and the separation and the refinement of the body and the animal soul and the world around us, in other words, once it's been illuminated and we refine the world, so we no longer have this impediment, this obstacle of darkness, we've illuminated the darkness, Haneshama atzma eila l'sharsha, the neshama then elevates to its root, the b'chinas atzmus eizbarach, in atzmus itself, helama atzmi, which is the level of helama atzmi, much higher than oir, shmoya atzmi, kimavur ba'hemshach, like he explains in Hemshech Ayin Beis, and I give a bunch of pages here, page 1452, page 1471, page 1482, page 1252, 1271, 1282, then page 1407 and 1408, and 1415. Those are the pages where he talks about the neshama in its ultimate root. L'mayla min ha'teira. That's higher than Teda Er. Remember, like the Mo'er, higher than Oyer. Like the Etzem Koyach Hariyah, that in the soul, the Etzem Koyach Hariyah does not need any light. It has everything it needs. V'roya ba'atzmei. And on that level, the neshama can see on its own. B'li siyua min dargis acheres, without the support of other levels. But that's only at the end of the Aveda, not the beginning. Hainu, aliyas er hariyah, mibchinas er makabel, mibchinas er mashpia. This is the elevation of the er hariyah from a level of er makabel, because the ayin initially is makabel because it needs an outside light to illuminate it, but now it's becoming er mashpia, mibchinas mo'er, like a luminary, a source of light. Acha neshama mashpia b'teda er matzmusei izbarach. To the point. Not only does the neshama not need the Torah, it's actually mamshich and transmits and impacts from atzmus into Torah er. So things now become reversed. Initially, the eye needed Torah er to illuminate so it should know how to live in this world, this dark world. But once the neshama is on course and accesses its root, it in turn firstly sees on its own, and then also impacts Torah Er by influencing and transmitting into Torah at higher levels of godliness from Atzmos. And how does this take place? This happens only due to the fact that the soul comes down below. And through its Avodah of radiating, illuminating the dark world. Like we know, the soul says to the Sherish of the Neshama Lamaila, Shcheirani, I am dark, because I came down into this dark world. Aval v'nova, but I'm beautiful. Dagam deshcheirani, shemesalam b'chinas eda neshama b'yiridasa lamata. Even though the neshama is dark, because its light was concealed as it came down below, and that's why it needs Torah air to illuminate it. But it's dafka there, down below in the darkness, that the neshama reaches a level of beauty that it could not reach above. The dafka idea of idasa lamata b'chinas ishen einai is dafka through its work below in the pupil of the eye. Shachar shebayin, the dark part of the eye, the dark. Nizgala b'chinas atzmus haneshama. Dafka there, the core of the soul gets revealed. The gam b'chinas hariyah b'chinas ha'atzmus. Shalamayla b'chinas hariyah the neshama lamayla. And access is a level of riyah, of atzmus, that's higher than the riyah of the neshama above. Gilui sherish neshama ba'atzmus is barach. The revelation of the root of the soul, we're on page 26 now, in atzmus is barach. Umashpiyah misham gam b'tera'er, and from there, it's mashpiyah, it transmits, also to tera'er, there's higher levels. Hemshach didan, where's this in Ayin Beis? He talks about it on page 1408. And 1455, and the end of page 1462. Okay, so we're now on top of page 26. Again, we shall stop for questions. Let's see, where are we time-wise? Any questions? No? Okay. Very nice. So now we continue on. Now we're going back to that Maimer. If you remember the Alter Rebbe's Maimer and the Mittler Rebbe's Maimer that wasn't published yet. According to what is explained there, Yesh Levayed, we can explain, that this is the meaning in my ve'einenu, and our eyes will see like the sun and the moon. What does that mean? The sun and the moon both shine. Yes, the moon reflects the sun, but they are luminaries. Shnei me'eres agdelim, the two luminaries, the celestial bodies in heaven that shine to earth, that illuminate the earth. So what does it mean that the eyes will see like the sun and the moon? So the Alter Rebbe and the Mittler Rebbe explain, Shala Osid Love, that in the future, through the work of the soul below, in the darkness of the world, today, in our time, Yisalet, in the future, once we finish the work, the Bechinas Ayin Sheba Neshama will elevate, the eye of the soul will elevate, Lebchinas Er Atzmi, Ad Lebchinas Mo'er, to the level of Eratmi, like we discussed, to the level of Mo'ir. That's what it means. Today, the eye needs the sun and the moon to illuminate and shine so the eye can see. But once there's the refinement and our Avodah, the eye will reach a level of being a Mo'ir itself, like the sun and the moon. It won't need the sun and the moon. It itself will be a shining entity. Without the need to receive light from the sun and the moon. But they'll be shining. Lashon mafil, v'loy te'ires. Lashon mafil means it's affecting others, not just te'ir, not just it will shine. It will make things shine and illuminate. Like the Mittler Rebbe emphasizes why it says me'ires, not te'ires, because you think in Hebrew, ve'neinu te'ires, our eyes will glow like the sun and the moon. But me'ires means it will illuminate, it will cause other things to shine. Why? Because it's being mashpia, not just that it's illuminating, it's illuminated, but it'll be like the sun and the moon itself. The Lashon Hadrush, this now is in the language of the Mittler Rebbe's Maimer. I'm sorry, the language of the Alter Rebbe's Maimer. Maimori Admur Azok and Sham Omet Tov Samachalef. The Alter Rebbe's Maimer, page 461. This is what he writes. And that's what it means our eyes will shine. Pirish Sheyir Er Atzmi. It'll be like an Er Atzmi, not an Er Makabel. V'anikra Moyer. And it's called Me'ires Mo'ir, like a luminary, a source of light. Al Shem Shemeir Ma'atzme Blishum Kabbalah Mizulase Canal. Because it's radiating on its own without receiving from another, like we said earlier. V'hainu, Kishiyir Shavin B'kemoson, that's when they will all be equal in stature. V'hoya Eira Lavona Ke'era Chama Mamish, where the moonlight and the sunlight will be Mamish equal. V'zeu Kishemesh U'Kireach, that's why it says both like the sun and moon, because there won't be any difference between them. And so too the eyes will be that way. Aliyah Chabad, Aliyah's Chabad the Nukve, this is the Chabad of Malchus that elevates. It's not receiving even from Chagas of Zah, the Mashpia, which is the sun. Kim Shavin Mamish, they're all equal, Vidal, Vidai Lemev. And that's enough for those that understand and discern. Okay. Good. Any questions? Okay. Let me see here. What's the time? Not 28. So let me see if I should go one more paragraph. I was just looking. On top of page 26, well, we're middle of page 26. That's not true. Okay, I think I'm going to stop here because we learned a lot here today, and I want to make sure everyone digests it. I don't want to overwhelm us all. The next piece goes even higher. I think I'm going to stop here. Okay. So we'll stop here. Middle of through the third paragraph. I'm stopping at the end of the third paragraph on page 26 of the essay. And we'll continue tomorrow, the next paragraphs. I'm just looking here. Okay. Yeah, we'll stop here.